Mellow greetings, everybody. My name is James. I'm from the internet. Today, we are going to be talking about a new weekly segment. What? For the last 6 months or so, we've been running a weekly segment called What the Hell's Going On with Donald Trump? Because he always had so much shit going on, it literally took an entire week to try to track it all down. Now, Donald Trump is no longer the president, and he's a retiree on a golf course in Florida. And frankly, trying to carve the time out of my weekly schedule to discuss his inane ramblings that nobody can hear because he's been deplatformed, it's kind of not worth it. So we're going to say goodbye to the past. We're going to let it go. However, the good news is that we now have time for a new reoccurring weekly segment. So without further ado, I would like to begin. What the hell's the police state up to? Philly police contract fight is on. Fraternal Order of Police Union seeks 5% accountability bonus for body camera use. Because the hundreds of thousands of dollars a year each one of these officers make isn't enough to buy their accountability, it merely buys their labor. If you want accountability, that's going to be extra. You just got to put the money right here. A 5% accountability pay boost for wearing body cameras, a 5% residency differential for living within city limits, a $2,400 annual clothing and maintenance allowance, triple overtime for appearing in court for 2 consecutive days an officer would normally have off. These are some of the demands the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 5 has put forward for the next Philadelphia Police Department contract, an agreement that has drawn elevated public scrutiny after last year's protests calling to defund the police. After City Council resolved to hold a hearing on the contract last year, the Fraternal Order of Police sued to stop it. The hearing, in November, lasted more than 7 hours and drew nearly 100 speakers. So apparently, this is the police response to the public demand for defund the police. Now, I don't recall seeing this level of blowback when city councils across America opted to continuously defund the schools and defund the libraries and defund the medical clinics. But for some reason, the words defund the police just send people into a tailspin, including, unsurprisingly, the police. The city has proposed its own contract changes, including a push to require officers to live in the city, rules limiting back pay or reinstatement for officers who are fired or disciplined, and a new performance management system. One notable change would bar arbiters from overturning discipline for proven misconduct. Another would permit the department to freely transfer anyone who can no longer fulfill police duties or demote them to a civilian post. And still another would let the department unilaterally set procedures for the board that handles police discipline. A city spokesperson emphasized that the proposal is just a draft, but that the changes, quote, would be critical in terms of improved accountability for wrongdoing. What? I'm sorry, did you just say allowing the police department to unilaterally set procedures for the board that handles police discipline would improve accountability for wrongdoing? I'm starting to get the idea that cities might be biased towards their own police forces. Reform advocates saw the city's pitch as a good first step, but some said the measures do not reflect the urgency that led them to march last summer and fall, and to seek a ballot measure installing a new police oversight commission, which passed with a 79% approval in November. Quote, the disciplinary process is deeply flawed. For advocates, the entire disciplinary process needs to be thrown out and we need to start all over again. So it would appear that police unions are now trying to push the idea that accountability means that they deserve to get paid even more, and that if they do something shitty, well, they should be the only ones who investigate themselves. Well played, police state. What else you got cooking? Minnesota police want a pipeline company to pay for weapons claimed as PPE. Police monitoring the Enbridge Line 3 pipeline opponents submitted invoices for tear gas, batons, flashbang grenades, and other riot gear. Yes, because when you are the police, all of those things are considered personal protective equipment. A Minnesota Sheriff's Office has requested that the tar sands pipeline company Enbridge reimburse the department for nearly $72,000 worth of riot gear and more than $10,000 in, quote, less than lethal weapons and ammunition, including tear gas, pepper spray, beanbag and sponge rounds, flashbang devices, and batons. The Sheriff's Office of Beltrami County, which sits at the center of an indigenous-led fight to stop the construction of Enbridge's Line 3 pipeline replacement project, labeled the weapons as personal protective equipment. I mean, if you look at it through the lens of these are people who fear for their lives and that's why they shoot your dog, then sure, I guess flashbang grenades count as personal protective equipment. The invoices await review by Minnesota Public Utilities Commission. The agency maintains an escrow account set up so that Enbridge can reimburse public safety agencies for expenses associated with Line 3 construction, especially costs for policing protests. In its construction permit, the Utilities Commission clarified that the fund, quote, may not be used to reimburse expenses for equipment except for personal protective gear for public safety personnel. The commissioners did not define the term personal protective gear. And so, of course, the local constabulary decided that meant anything they want to buy is personal protective gear. Why? So that they can all go run out and play G.I. Joe with their nifty body armor as they beat the shit out of 16-year-old indigenous protesters standing on the side of the road holding a sign that says water is life. Quote, I don't think by any stretch of the imagination batons could be considered PPE or grenades. Those are obviously militarized equipment to be used to subdue and oppress the indigenous people and allies that are resisting this project from going through our territory. The Beltrami County Sheriff's Office did not answer a detailed request for comment. What? The invoices showed that the Beltrami County Sheriff's Office began purchasing riot gear to respond to Line 3 protests in April of 2016, in the immediate aftermath of massive protests against the Dakota Access Pipeline near the Standing Rock Reservation in North Dakota. Local agencies spent at least $38 million on a militarized response that involved the use of water hoses, tear gas, and other less than lethal weapons. Oddly enough, those less than lethal weapons still managed to kill people. Do you know why? Because they're only less than lethal if you don't fire them at people's heads. As of last summer, North Dakota was still seeking to recover the full expense from the Army Corps of Engineers, which manages much of the land on which resistance camps were located. Pipeline parent company Energy Transfer chipped in $15 million. Gee, wasn't that nice of them to, throw some change into the cup? Gotta love those corporate partners. Of the more than $190,000 in expenses that the Beltrami County Sheriff's Office invoiced to the escrow account, at least $130,000 could be considered equipment, including nearly $20,000 worth of protective suits and shields. But the county also bought Sharpies, cameras, toolboxes, and saws to remove protesters who lock themselves to equipment. Yes, I can see how that would be considered personal protective equipment. In December of 2016, the Sheriff's Office purchased batons, shields, flashlight cases, and gas masks, most likely to protect law enforcement from their own tear gas, all described as personal protective equipment in an invoice submitted to the Public Utilities Commission in November. That's right. The police are so concerned about their protection, they need protection against themselves, and they're going to make somebody else pay for it. I wonder what else is going on in the wonderful world of the police state. LAPD officers allegedly shared photo mocking George Floyd with caption, "You take my breath away." Ah, yes, a very police state Valentine to you all. An image allegedly mocking the killing of George Floyd with the words, "You take my breath away," in a Valentine-like post reportedly shared among officers has prompted an internal investigation by the Los Angeles Police Department. Quote, "Our investigation is to determine the accuracy of the allegations while also reinforcing our zero tolerance for anything with racist views," Chief Michael Moore told the Los Angeles Times. Woo! And for a minute there, I thought we were going to have like a full-blown police culture problem, but thankfully, the police are going to investigate themselves. So I guess we're good here, right? The LAPD's official Twitter account on Sunday confirmed the department's investigation, prompted by allegations that an image was being passed around the department and that this image was in the workplace. Also, allegations that the post with the image was authored by a department employee. I am shocked. Frankly, I am just stunned that this sort of thing would happen. I mean, could you imagine the police joking about another police officer murdering an unarmed black man? I mean, that would just be outside the pale, right? That would be something that if I said it would be so ludicrous, you would scoff. But no, that's just another day of beautiful police culture in America today, in the American police state. All right, what else you got? Portland police officers guard Fred Meyer dumpsters, face off with residents seeking discarded food. That's right, with everything going on in the country today, the number one thing that the police are concerned with is protecting dumpsters from looters. Roughly a dozen Portland police officers faced off with a small group at a Northeast Portland Fred Meyer on Tuesday after people tried to take food that had been thrown away. Workers at the Hollywood West Fred Meyer threw away thousands of perishable items because the store, like many others, had lost power in an outage brought on by the region's winter storm. Images on social media showed mountains of packaged meat, cheese, and juice, as well as whole turkeys and racks of ribs that had been tossed into two large dumpsters near the store. A few people gathered about 2:30 in the afternoon in hopes of salvaging the food. But within a few hours, people seeking food from the dumpsters began to report police officers showing up to guard the dumpsters and prevent people from taking the items. Yes, because in the middle of a pandemic where people haven't been able to work or earn money in a year, and then in the coldest part of winter, lose power, find a place where there's food to be salvaged, and go there, the police are still going to guard that. It's literally somebody else's trash. But it doesn't matter because trash is still private property, and the police's first priority will always be to defend and protect private property, not you or your much vaunted rights. Property is always number one on the list. About 15 people eventually gathered in an attempt to collect food. At that point, a dozen officers arrived at the scene. One officer wasn't wearing a mask and refused to put one on until a supervisor arrived and brought him one. Neither Portland Police nor the store's spokesperson responded to requests for comment. Juniper Simonis, an environmental biologist and data scientist who arrived to document the police presence, said officers showed up and threatened those on hand with arrest, at which point the crowd moved across the street. Simonis said they took out their press badge and went closer to take photos of the officers who were standing in front of the bins full of food. Quote, "I'm just interacting with officers and trying to get their information. And then they say, 'We're going to arrest you if you don't leave,' and threatened me with trespassing." The immediate action to prevent people from taking the discarded food speaks to the value the city places on providing aid to those in need. Quote, "The people who were there weren't there for selfish reasons. They were there to get food, to distribute to hungry people around the city. They're mutual aid groups that have been helping feed people at warming centers because the city doesn't have enough resources to feed them. They do, however, have enough resources to pay the police to go out in the middle of a winter storm when nobody has power and guard dumpsters from hungry people." Now, contrary to popular belief, I do not continuously revisit and lean into this particular subject because I think that everybody who wants to be a cop is somehow a horrible person or wants to go out and do bad things. That's not why I'm here doing this. I'm doing this because there is an overarching system throughout the entirety of the United States of America that is approximately 1.5 million armed individuals who have belief structures that include stuff like, I should be paid more if you want me to be accountable, and I should be paid more if you want me to live in the neighborhood that I'm actually policing. Or, I think when an unarmed black man gets choked to death in the middle of the street, it's fucking hilarious. Or, hey, stun grenades, those are just personal protective equipment. And these stories are not the exception, they are the norm. And if you don't believe me, well shit, Just tune in next week because we're going to have another segment of what the hell is going on with the police state. Until next time, my name is James. I am from the internet and I'm out. Peace.